All right, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about a piece of tech that honestly is running a huge chunk of your digital life. Think about your social media feeds, all those complex apps you use every day. It's called React, and by the end of this, you're not just going to know what it is, you're going to get why it was such a massive game changer for building on the web and even beyond. So let's dive right in.
So let me ask you something. You ever just stop and wonder how the best websites these days are just so seamless? You know, you like a post, a comment pops up, you filter a huge list of items, and it all happens instantly. There's no clunky page reload, none of that waiting around. It really feels less like a website and more like a native app on your computer, right? Well, there's a very good reason for that.
You gotta remember, it wasn't that long ago that pretty much every single click you made on a website meant the whole page had to blink and redraw itself from scratch. It was jarring. The old way was slow, it was clunky, but the modern way, a way that React really helped create, gets rid of those full-page reloads, and that's what gives us the smooth, instant feel we totally expect now.
To really get why this was such a revolution, we need to look at the root of the problem. We're talking about a technical bottleneck that drove developers crazy for years. And we're going to see exactly how this played out for a real-world startup named Buddyfy.
Okay, so at the very heart of this problem is this thing called the DOM, the Document Object Model. The easiest way to think about it is like a live, interactive map of a web page. It's what the browser looks at to draw everything you see. But here's the catch. The DOM was really built for old-school static websites. So when you try to make even a tiny change, like just updating a number, it's like rebuilding an entire Lego castle just to swap out one single brick. It's super, super slow and inefficient.
And that's the key takeaway right there. As our apps got more and more complex, with thousands of little moving parts, this constant process of rebuilding the DOM just became a total performance killer. Every new like, every comment, every notification, it all just bogged things down and made for a really frustrating experience for users.
Which brings us right to Buddyfy. So this was a mobile app startup, and you won't believe how they were managing their data. They were literally editing database tables by hand. As you can see from their own documents, they knew this was not just slow, it was incredibly risky. The chance for human error, for security problems, was huge. They needed a better way, and they needed it yesterday.
And this, right here, is where React steps onto the scene. And it wasn't just a small improvement. It was a completely new way of thinking about building user interfaces, and it was all built around two incredibly powerful ideas that hit these problems head-on.
Okay, big idea number one, components. Just forget about building web pages as one giant, messy file. React's philosophy is totally different. It says, build your interface out of tiny, independent, reusable pieces, just like Lego bricks. A search bar is a brick, a button is a brick, a user's profile picture, that's just a slightly bigger brick made up of smaller ones.
See, each of these components handles its own business, its own data, its own logic. You build it once, you test it once, and then you can pop it in anywhere you need it. For a startup like Buddyfy, this was an absolute game changer. It gave them a system that was easy to extend, easy to scale, and easy to maintain, so they could grow without constantly starting from scratch. Now, if components are the Lego bricks, then big idea number two is the secret weapon that makes it all lightning fast, the virtual DOM. This is React's absolutely brilliant answer to that slow, clunky browser DOM problem we were just talking about.
So instead of touching that slow browser DOM all the time, React keeps a super fast, lightweight copy of it just sitting in memory. Think of it like a virtual blueprint. And because this virtual version is just a simple piece of code, completely separate from what's on the screen, changing it is basically free. It costs almost nothing.
So let's walk through this. You click a like button. What happens? Well, React doesn't immediately mess with the real screen. No way. First, it updates its own super fast virtual blueprint. Then, and this is the magic part, it runs a lightning-fast comparison between the new blueprint and the old one. It instantly spots the only thing that's different. And then it performs this tiny surgical strike on the slow, real DOM. It just changes the light count, and that's it. Everything else is left untouched. That is the secret weapon. That's why it feels so fast.
Okay, so that's the theory. Let's bring it back to the real world. How did these two huge ideas, these reusable components and this super fast virtual DOM, actually help our startup Buddyfy get out of the mess they were in?
So, great. You've built your app out of hundreds of little Lego bricks. Fantastic. But wait, now you have a new headache. All this data needs to flow between these components. And keeping track of which component has which piece of data can turn into a complete spaghetti mess really, really fast. So how do you handle all that complexity?
Well, for Butterfly and for tons of other big React apps, the solution was a tool called Redux. People call it a predictable state container, which sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Think of it like a central brain for your app. It holds all the important data in one place. This way, components don't have to awkwardly pass data to each other. They all just look to this one single source of truth, making sure everybody is always on the same page. And here's how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together for them. You've got React building the UI with all those components. You have Redux managing all the data. And then you have other essential tools like Webpack and Git that support the whole development process. It's a full-on ecosystem, all built around this new component-based way of thinking.
And the results for Butterfly? They got exactly what they were hoping for. A secure, fast CMS that could actually grow with them. Their own project notes say that loading times were greatly reduced. The new system was a breeze to maintain and add features to. And, most importantly, it wiped out those huge risks of human error and security problems they started with. A huge win.
But you know, the impact of React goes so much deeper than just one startup success story. The truth is, learning React isn't just about learning a new library. It's really about learning to think about building software in a fundamentally different way.
This quote from the Full Stack React book just hits the nail on the head. The authors make a powerful point. The ideas that React forces you to learn are so universal that you'll keep using them your whole career, even if React itself is eventually replaced by something else.
So how does it make you a better developer? Well, for one, it forces you to break problems down into small, reusable components. It makes you really master JavaScript itself instead of some weird custom template language. And it introduces you to these really powerful ideas from computer science, like immutability, which is just a fancy way of saying you never change data directly, you always make a fresh copy. That one change alone makes your apps way more predictable and a heck of a lot easier to fix when they break. And in this way of thinking has turned out to be so effective, so powerful, that it couldn't be contained inside the web browser. It is completely broken out and is now shaping how we build all kinds of interfaces, everywhere.
And what really makes that possible is the culture of the community. As one of the original creators said, they are not afraid of rethinking best practices. It's this constant questioning, this drive to challenge the way things have always been done that lets React's core ideas evolve and spread to new places.
And I mean, just look at the results. It's incredible. That exact same Lego brick model we've been talking about. It's now being used to build real native apps for your iPhone and Android phone with something called React Native. It's being used for virtual reality, for desktop apps, you name it. It turns out this component idea works pretty much anywhere you need to build a user interface.
Which really leaves us with this one last mind-bending thought to chew on. React started out by solving a performance problem on the web. But what it really did was unleash a much, much bigger idea, the incredible power of the reusable component. So what's next? What happens when the next great user interface isn't even on a screen, but it's still built from these same smart, independent components, all working together in ways we can barely even imagine today? That, right there, is the true legacy of React. Thanks for tuning in.